Hey guys, welcome into the 14. I'm Nick Cole, and we're going through the Week 3 SEC football games and giving you some betting advice. And today, we're talking about South Carolina at 2-0, making a trip to Athens to play Georgia, also at 2-0, on Saturday in Sanford Stadium, 7 p.m. Eastern, kickoff on ESPN. From a betting perspective, this game is kind of lopsided. Georgia opened as a 32-point favorite, and that number has held firm throughout the week. The over-under, however, has moved a little bit, opened at 52.5 and is down to 48. Going to bring in our betting expert, Christopher Smith. Christopher, what do you think about this big rivalry game, SEC East?
Boy, there was a time a couple years ago where South Carolina snuck up on Georgia and won a defensive battle in overtime, and those days are long gone. I don't think this game will be close, but the interesting thing about betting is that even if the game's not close, especially with a spread of 32, a lot on the line could be a lot on the line late in the game. Could be fun to watch anyway. So why don't you take us through Nick's news and notes and tell us what's going on around these two programs right now?
Sure. So from a weather perspective, we have a little bit to monitor going into Saturday evening in Athens. The temperature should be in, should be in the 70s. But we've got a 50% chance of rain that somewhat increases the later we get into the evening. So wind shouldn't be much of a factor, but we may see a situation where there's some rain on Saturday night. From an injury standpoint, South Carolina quarterback Luke Doty we've been sort of patiently waiting for his 2021 debut. He missed the first 2 games of the season. Although he dressed and warmed up for the ECU game, they just chose not to play him in that narrow win. And then on the Georgia side of the ball, also some quarterback concerns. Starting quarterback JT Daniels did not play in week 2 against UAB, didn't need him in a big win. But they also had backup quarterback Stetson Bennett, who did play well in that win, also crop up on the injury report this week with the back issue. So I think both maybe are trending towards playing, but certainly something to monitor, along with a hodgepodge of wide receivers and tight ends that are at various stages of their injury recovery in Georgia. Quite a bit going on there with the Georgia offense. And then just some things to watch for in this game. I mentioned it just a minute ago, but Georgia, they beat Clemson in a low-scoring 10-3 game in week 1 neutral site. Everybody's question going into week 2 was, well, can their Georgia offense score any points? Their only touchdown was a pick 6 from the defense. And the answer, even though JT Daniels didn't play, was a resounding yes. They scored 56 points on UAB and really could have named their score in week 2. And I know we talked about UAB and how they're actually a pretty good program. They just, for whatever reason, can't get a good performance in against a Power 5 top-tier program like Georgia. And the deficiencies really showed there through that game. So what we know going into week 3 is Georgia can score when the situation warrants it, and they can throw the ball when the situation warrants it. And obviously not playing a Clemson defense helps in that process, right? South Carolina is, while in the same state as Clemson, is not on the same level of them defensively right now. The other thing to talk about, they're not the only 2-0 team in this game. I know we talk about South Carolina being a long ways away from where they were under Steve Spurrier or even the good times more recently. Shane Beamer, you got to give some credit where it's due here. He's won both of the games on his schedule. Sure, the first one was a cakewalk Eastern Illinois team, but it was a 46-0 win, kind of a statement win to say, we're not going to sit around and let the Citadel or whoever hang around with us anymore. And then the second game, they were actually behind ECU for almost the entire game. And I think that their ability to overcome both the turnovers that they were creating, the penalties that they were taking. In the past, South Carolina may have let that bother them and let them lose that game. But you got to give credit to Beamer and his staff. They kept this team focused. They overcame some of that adversity, kicked a couple of field goals late in the fourth quarter, one to tie it, one to win it as time expired. And they're 2-0. I think I read a stat this week that's the first time a South Carolina coach has started 2-0 in like 39 years. So credit to them. Makes it somewhat interesting, even though the line is a little bit of an indicator that this game, there's still quite a bit of talent gap at this point. And then the final thing I would bring up is just that line and how It's kind of unusual for this game in recent years. You know, we talk about Georgia's won 5 of the last 6. We talked about the last time this game was in Athens in 2019. South Carolina actually snuck up and beat Georgia in overtime in a low scoring game, which is probably sort of the footprint or the map to get there for a close game on Saturday night for the Gamecocks. Christopher, from a betting perspective, what are you seeing out of this? I know we're not usually looking at South Carolina as a 32-point conference dog, but is it warranted today?
Well, you know, I've never seen an SEC coach, even at Vanderbilt, be so excited to beat Eastern Illinois and East Carolina. So that tells you something right there. And I noticed we had a comment on our last South Carolina video. Some Gamecocks fan was getting on me because I said that, number one, the Gamecocks don't have an SEC caliber roster, which I completely stand by. And two, I said their defensive line is maybe one of the better ones in the SEC. I think both of those things continue to be true. But you know, this is not going to be a game. If you're South Carolina and you're kind of feeling good about yourself after coming back in East Carolina and blowing out Eastern Illinois, you may want to turn away from the TV a little bit on Saturday, at least for Saturday. You know, looking at the box score, South Carolina managed 5.1 yards per play against East Carolina, which is not horrible, but it's also not great. And South Carolina or East Carolina is 101st in defensive S&P plus. Georgia has allowed 3.2 yards per play this season, and that's against Clemson and UAB. And the Gamecocks haven't scored more than 20 points on Georgia since 2014. They scored 20 in 2015 and then 20 again in 2 overtimes in 2019 in sort of a fluke game. South Carolina's offense could be worse now than any of those years since 2014. And Georgia's defense could be the best that it has been during that period of time. They're giving up 2.2 yards per carry. It's hard to maintain your scoring average on defense when you're giving up just 5 points per game. So wouldn't it shock me if South Carolina goes over that? Also, I would not be shocked at all if South Carolina comes in under double digits in terms of points for this game. I can see Kirby Smart playing super conservative. South Carolina is, like I said, pretty decent on the defensive line, but their back 7 is not going to cut it. Maybe they'll catch a break if Georgia's entire 2 deep at quarterback, receiver, and tight end are all out and not available. But even then, I think Georgia's got the athletes to take advantage of this South Carolina defense. I'm really glad personally that South Carolina pulled out the win last week because I think they held a lot of matchup advantages in that game. And I think this line would be in the stratosphere even more than it is right now if that hadn't taken place. But Nick, we were 500 last week, both of us betting on our SEC picks, our best bets, and our game-by-game picks. So we got to come up with some winners this week, of course. Who are you taking in South Carolina, Georgia, and why are you taking it?
Well, you mentioned the best bets from last week, and South Carolina -2 is actually one of them for me. So the Gamecocks came through for me, even if it took to the very last second of the game to do so, right? So I'm going to stick with them this week. I feel like I owe them to stay on the Gamecocks train. And here's the way I look at this. If South Carolina can get to 17 points, which you just, so you rattle off some numbers that make that seem tougher than it might seem on the surface when I say, hey, can you get me to 17 points? Most times you'd say, yeah, in a college football game, we can get there. But if I can get them there, I think the over 48 and the giving them plus 32 points, they can both hit. I mean, I think Georgia wins this game. I really do. And I think it's probably not all that close. But I feel like South Carolina, anytime you're laying that many points in a conference game, they could accidentally cover this. 1 pick six, 1 dropped fumble on a wet field or something, and it flips the field. It really is a situation where I don't love South Carolina in the game head to head, but with that many points, I feel like they can accidentally get there, and I think we can cover that 48. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really like the total in this game. Personally, I would much rather take South Carolina's team total under. But since we're picking every side and every total in all of SEC games, then I'll take under 48. but I do like I'm not going to bet this with my own money. It doesn't make my best bets or my final cut for what I'm actually playing this week. But I do like Georgia minus 32 a little bit better. I could see very easily South Carolina being at 0, 3, or 7 points deep into the fourth quarter. And then it's just a matter of if they get a late cosmetic score or not. But this Georgia defense, I think, is the best in the country this year. And we saw what happened against Clemson, and Clemson's offensive line is having some problems. They're way more talented than the South Carolina team is. And I don't care if you got Luke Doty, if you got a graduate assistant, or if you put Steve Spurrier in there this week under center or behind center taking a shotgun snap. Either way, I don't see South Carolina being able to handle Georgia. I mean, the question on Georgia's defense is in their secondary, and if you can kind of beat them deep and their inexperience back there, that's not even going to come into play this week. Georgia's going to just crush South Carolina at the line of scrimmage. Whatever quarterback they try back out there is going to be completely overwhelmed. And if you like defensive football and you like to see an SEC team get just totally dominated by one of the best defenses in the country, then tune in and watch Georgia just overwhelm South Carolina in this game. I've got zero confidence in the Gamecocks being able to do anything on offense. So I will take Georgia minus 32, and I will take under 48. We'll see how it goes. For Nick Cole, I'm Christopher Smith for the 14, and we'll talk to you next week.